6 months ago, I couldn't say even one complete sentence in English. Not even something as simple as, "How are you?" And today, I'm working at a top USA tech company, and I got there by learning English completely on my own. No expensive classes. No travel. Just a system that actually worked. Hey there, and welcome to Talk Easy, English Podcasts. If you have ever felt stuck, frustrated, or embarrassed about your English, please stay with me. Because in this episode, I am going to share exactly how I went from zero to fluent in just 6 months. Step by step. No useless talk, no fake promises. This is not just my story, it could be yours too. So, let's go back to the moment everything changed. The day I got invited to my dream job interview and completely froze. I always dreamed of becoming a software engineer at a top tech company. I really loved coding, still do. And I was good at it. I spent endless days and nights improving my skills, trying to be the best I could be. After years of hard work, I finally got my chance. I applied for a huge tech company in the United States, and one day, I will never forget this, I received an email from the recruiter. "Congratulations! You've been selected for an interview." I was over the moon. I started imagining my new life, moving to another country, working with top professionals from all over the world. But then, the interview happened. I remember it so clearly, like it just happened yesterday. I opened Zoom, and there they were, 3 interviewers, all native English speakers. As soon as they started talking, it felt like someone hit fast forward on their voices. Everything sounded so fast, I couldn't catch a single word. Then came the first question. "Laura, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience in software development?" And I completely froze. I knew what I wanted to say. I had the answer in my mind, but the words would not come out. I said, "Yes, I am software. I do coding. Many projects." "Good. I am very good." They stared at me. And that silence. It was like a knife to the stomach. They asked another question, but I couldn't answer that one either. Finally, one of them gave me a polite smile and said, "All right, Laura. Thank you for your time." I knew what that meant. I had lost my chance. Not because I wasn't good at my job, but because I could not communicate in English. That day hit me hard. I finally realized how powerful English really is. It is not just a language, it is a key. And at that moment, I didn't have it. I felt disappointed and frustrated with myself. For so many years, I told myself I don't need English. I will just be great at my job and that will be enough. But now, I saw the truth. Without English, it felt like I didn't exist professionally. That night, I made a decision. I was going to learn English, and I was going to do it fast. Now, most people, when they decide to learn English, do the obvious thing. They sign up for expensive classes. But I didn't. And I will tell you why. Because I had already tried that before, and it didn't work. A year earlier, I had joined an online English course. The teacher made us memorize vocabulary lists, do tons of grammar exercises, and study all these complicated rules. But after 3 whole months, I still could not have a basic conversation. That is when I knew those expensive classes were not the answer. If I really wanted to speak English and speak it fast, I needed a different approach. I needed something that actually worked in real life. And that is when I came up with my 6-month method, which I'm about to walk you through step by step. Let's start with part 1, the first 20 days. You know, one of the biggest mistakes beginners make is thinking they need more and more vocabulary. I used to believe that too. I thought, if I can just learn 1,000 words, I will be fluent. But here is the thing, I already knew hundreds of words, and still, I couldn't speak. So during those first 20 days, I made a decision. I was not going to learn any new words. Instead, I focused on something way more effective, learning how to actually use the words I already knew. Here's exactly what I did. Step 1. I created what I call a survival sentence list. I sat down and asked myself, what do I need to say in daily life? Then I wrote down 50 simple sentences that I knew I would actually use. Stuff like, "Hi, how are you? Can you repeat that? I don't understand. I'm learning English. I need a coffee, please." And every single morning, I read those 50 sentences out loud. Not just once or twice, I read them 10 times. At the beginning it was hard. But after 4 days, the sentences started to feel automatic. Step 2. I began talking to myself in English every day. Honestly, this was one of the most powerful habits I built. Whenever I was alone, I just started speaking English to myself. Like, in the shower, I would say, "I am taking a shower. The water is hot. I feel relaxed." Or while cooking, "I am making eggs. I like eggs. They are easy to cook." At first, yeah, I felt super silly. But then I realized this was my own private classroom. No one could hear me. No one could laugh or judge. And in just 1 week, something amazing happened. My brain started thinking in English. Step 3. I practiced 10 sentences every day, but I added a twist. Each day, I picked 10 sentences from movies or real conversations. But instead of just reading them, I copied them exactly. Same speed, same feeling, same pronunciation as the native speaker. I repeated each one 10 times. That's how I started fixing my accent and learning how to sound natural. And by the end of those first 20 days, everything changed. I stopped translating in my head. I could say basic sentences without hesitation. I felt more confident. But I knew that was only the beginning. Part 2. The real practice begins. After those first 20 days of working on my biggest mistake, I was finally ready for the next step. Sure, I could now speak simple sentences without overthinking, and that gave me confidence. But I didn't just want to speak a little. I wanted to have full conversations. I wanted to understand native speakers without having to translate every word in my head. I wanted fluency. So, I created a brand new plan, one that completely changed my progress. If you stick to this, I am telling you, your English will improve faster than you ever imagined. I noticed something important. Whenever I tried to speak English, my brain felt slow. Like, I knew the words, but I couldn't put them together quickly. I needed something to help me make speaking feel natural. That is when I started using something I now call the question-answer method. It is super simple, but incredibly effective. Here is how it works. I ask myself a question in English. I answer right away, without overthinking. Then I repeat the question and give a different answer. For example, I would begin with something easy like, "Question, what did you do today?" In the beginning, my answers were super short. I just said I worked. But I pushed myself to say a bit more. I worked on my project. Then I added more. I worked on my project for about 3 hours. And I kept going. I worked for 3 hours, then I took a short break. Eventually, I was saying things like, I worked on my project for 3 hours, then I took a break and made myself a coffee. Each time I responded, I tried to add more detail. It was like training my brain to think in English and express myself more naturally, without pausing or doubting. Let me give you another example. Let's say the question is, what did you eat for breakfast? At first, I would just say, I ate eggs. Then I added more, I ate eggs and toast. Next, I ate eggs, toast, and a banana. After that, I said I had eggs, toast, and a banana because I was super hungry. And finally, I ate eggs, toast, and a banana because I was really hungry, and honestly, I love having a big breakfast. I did this little routine every day, at least half an hour. It made a huge difference in my speaking speed. Over time, my sentences became much longer, and I stopped mentally translating from Spanish. One of the hardest things for me, though, was pronunciation. I mean, I could speak, but I still sounded very foreign. People could understand me, but my accent was really strong. So I tried something called the echo technique. It turned out to be the best way I found to improve my pronunciation without needing a private teacher. This is how it works. First, I listen to native speakers, usually from movies, YouTube videos, or podcasts. Then I paused the audio after each sentence. Next, I repeated what I heard, trying to match the way they said it, the speed, the tone, the emotion, everything. For example, I took a clip from a movie where someone said, "I don't know what you are talking about." I paused, and then I repeated, "I don't know what you are talking about." At first, it was tough. But after saying it 10 times, I noticed my voice started to sound a lot more like the speakers. I tried the same thing with a podcast clip. Someone said, "It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk." I paused and copied that too. "It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk." I made this part of my daily routine, 15 minutes every day. And after a month, I could hear a huge improvement. Even native speakers started saying things like, "Wow, your English sounds really natural." I always knew vocabulary was important, but I also figured out that memorizing long word lists does not actually help much. So I switched to a method that worked better for me, the story method. Here is what I did. Each day, I chose 5 new words. Then I made a short story using all 5 words. After that, I read the story out loud 10 times. And finally, I made sure to use those new words in real conversations. Let me give you an example. New words: arrive, party, excited, invitation, surprise. My little story went like this. I was super excited because I got an invitation to a big party. When I arrived, I was totally surprised. It was actually my birthday party. I kept doing this every day. After 2 months, I had picked up over 1,000 new words, and I never had to memorize boring lists. One of the biggest mistakes that many learners make, including me, is thinking in their native language first and then translating everything into English. That slows you down and makes your speech feel unnatural. So I trained myself to think directly in English. How did I do that? First, I described everything around me in English. Like when I walked outside, I would say in my head, "The sky is blue." "It is hot today." "I see people walking." Or, "That man is wearing a red shirt." Second, I would ask myself questions and answer them in English. Like, "What am I doing right now?" And I would reply, "I am sitting in a chair, drinking coffee, and writing in my notebook." Third, I started keeping a daily journal, in English, of course. Every night, I wrote about my day. At first, my sentences were very simple. But after a month, my writing felt more natural. And a few weeks after that, I noticed something amazing. I stopped translating. English words just came to me, like they were already part of my thoughts. One thing I did that sounds simple, but actually changed everything, was setting a rule. Every single day, I had to speak English for at least 1 hour. No excuses, none. If I did not have anyone to talk to, I talked to myself. If I was short on time, I spoke while cooking, cleaning, or walking. And if I felt lazy, I reminded myself, English is my future. I cannot give up. Part 3. My final breakthrough. By now, I had built a strong habit of listening and repeating every day. But I wanted to level up even more. That is when I realized something important. Just listening and speaking were not enough. If I really wanted to speak well, I needed to understand how English works. The grammar, the structure, the logic. I did not want to keep making little mistakes that could confuse people. I also wanted to sound as natural as possible. So I started paying more attention to how native speakers built their sentences. Each time I heard someone say something in English, I did not just copy them. I asked myself, why did they say it like that? For example, I heard someone say, I have been learning English for 5 months. But back in school, I had been taught to say, I am learning English for 5 months. That moment really opened my eyes. I realized that the English we learn in school is often different from how real people talk. So I started researching the differences between textbook English and real-life English. I began studying tenses the way they are actually used. Like, when do people use the present perfect tense? Why do they say, I have been learning, and not I am learning? These little details changed everything for me. I began writing down useful sentence patterns and tried using them in my daily speaking practice. One area that gave me a lot of trouble was prepositions. Like, why do we say on the bus, but in the car? Why is it at night, but in the morning? So I got a small notebook and made it my preposition journal. Whenever I came across a tricky one, I would write it down with a clear example. And whenever I felt confused, I looked it up online or listened closely to how native speakers used it. To go even further, I started writing a daily diary in English. Every evening, I would write about my day. At first, it was really basic. Stuff like, today I went to work. I was tired. I ate pizza. It was good. But I wanted to get better. So I started asking myself, how would a native speaker write this? I read blogs, books, even news articles, and I studied how those writers formed their sentences. Then I tried to copy that same rhythm and structure in my own writing. One thing that really boosted my progress was shadowing. I would find videos of native speakers, put on my headphones, and repeat every word right after them, trying to match their speed, tone, and pronunciation exactly. I did this for at least 30 minutes every day. And in just a few weeks, my pronunciation improved like crazy. Another trick that helped me a lot was watching English movies with subtitles. But I did not just watch for fun. I paused after each sentence, repeated it out loud, and focused on matching the pronunciation, rhythm, and emotion. Little by little, my English started sounding smoother, more natural. And that is when I realized something really important. English is not just about learning vocabulary or understanding grammar. It is also about having confidence. A lot of people already know the words. They just do not speak because they are too afraid. I made up my mind. I would stop being scared of making mistakes. From that moment on, I started talking to people in English whenever the opportunity came up. Whether it was at work, in the supermarket, or with friends, I pushed myself to speak, even when I felt unsure or nervous. And then something unexpected happened. People actually understood me. Even when I said something a little wrong, no one laughed at me or made me feel bad. That gave me the confidence to keep trying. But then came the scariest part of all, speaking to native English speakers. Just the thought of it made me anxious. I was afraid they would not understand me, or worse, that I would completely freeze up. So I came up with a plan. I picked 5 common conversation topics and practiced them every single day. Things like, how was your day? What kind of work do you do? What is your favorite food? I practiced answering each of those questions smoothly, without pausing or thinking too much. And then I finally took the leap. I joined an online group where people from all over the world met to practice speaking English. At first, I was shaking with nerves. But soon I realized we were all there for the same reason. We were all learners. I ended up making new friends from different countries, and we started practicing together regularly. Not only did my speaking improve, but suddenly, learning English felt fun and exciting. As I entered the final phase of my journey, I could feel this strong sense of confidence growing inside me. I was no longer the girl who had once been turned down because of her English. I had changed, step by step, with daily effort, steady practice, and a whole new mindset. Now I want to pass along the most valuable lessons I discovered so that you can reach fluency too. One day, I was doing what had become a habit, talking to myself in the mirror in English. But this time, it felt different. I was not hesitating anymore. I was not translating every thought from Spanish. The words just came out, smooth and natural. It felt like magic, but I knew it was not magic at all. It was the result of months of showing up and putting in the work. That same day, I decided to take on a real challenge. I joined a virtual meeting where people from all over the world discussed different topics in English. I was nervous, of course, but I told myself, you have come too far to let fear stop you now. And then I spoke. My words flowed clearly and confidently. I was not searching for phrases or trying to remember vocabulary. I understood what everyone was saying, and I was able to respond without getting lost. People were actually listening, nodding along, and asking me follow-up questions. It was surreal. That was the moment I knew deep in my heart I had made it. I had reached fluency. 6 months after starting this journey, I reapplied to my dream job. But this time, I was not the same person. I was not the scared, unsure version of myself who walked in before. No, I was completely different. I walked into that interview with confidence. I sat across from the recruiter, not as someone afraid of English, but as someone who had mastered it. I spoke with clarity. I answered every question smoothly. I was not just speaking English, I was owning it. And I could tell by the way they looked at me, they noticed. They saw my growth, my effort, and the person I had become. A few days later, my phone rang. I will never forget that moment. Laura, congratulations. You got the job. For a second, I just stood there frozen. This was it, my dream job. The same company that had once turned me down. But now, they wanted me. The job came with a salary that changed my life. Way more than I had ever imagined earning. I just stood there, overwhelmed with emotion. The very first thing I did, I called my parents. Mom, Dad, I did it. My mother started crying right away. My father, who rarely shows emotions, simply said, "We always knew you could." And right then I realized this was not just about me. I had done it for them too. With my first paycheck, I bought something special for each of them. For my dad, a beautiful watch he had always admired but never bought for himself. For my mom, a gold necklace, something to honor all the sacrifices she made for our family. When I gave them the gifts, they tried to refuse. "We do not need anything, daughter," they told me. But I looked at them and said no. This is my way of saying thank you. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And that moment, it meant everything to me. That is when I truly understood. All the sleepless nights, the frustration, the failures, the doubts, it was all worth it. Every single struggle had led me here. Key lessons from my journey. Now I want to share the biggest takeaways from my experience, what actually helped me become fluent in English in just a few months. First, your mindset matters more than anything. Most people fail because they convince themselves they cannot learn English. I used to believe that too. But the day I changed my mindset, everything changed. I started saying to myself, English is just a skill. I can learn it like any other. I stopped thinking, I am bad at English, and started saying, I am getting better every day. Because if you tell yourself you can't do it, you will not. But if you believe in yourself, you will always find a way. Second, surround yourself with English. I made English part of my everyday routine. I changed the language on my phone to English. I only watched shows and movies in English. I listened to English music, even if I didn't understand every word. I followed English-speaking creators on Instagram and YouTube. Little by little, I was filling my world with English. I also trained myself to think and speak in English. Third, speak, even when you are scared. So many people stay silent because they are afraid to mess up. But mistakes are how we grow. I used to be afraid too, but then I realized native speakers are not judging us. Most of them appreciate it when we try. So I forced myself to speak. The more I talked, the easier it became. Fourth, listening and shadowing are powerful. Listening is just as important as speaking. I train my ears by listening to English podcasts, watching interviews, and listening to audiobooks. But I didn't just sit there and listen. I practiced shadowing. That means I listened to a sentence, then immediately repeated it, copying the pronunciation, rhythm, and emotion. It helped my fluency so much. Fifth, build your vocabulary in a smart way. In the beginning, I tried memorizing big lists of words. It was boring, and I forgot most of them. So I switched strategies. I learned words in context. I focused on phrases, not just single words. 6. Learning grammar without the textbooks. I did not waste time going through thick grammar books for hours. Instead, I learned grammar the same way kids do, by using the language. I picked it up naturally through listening and speaking. And whenever I made a mistake, I paid attention and corrected myself. For example, I used to say, he go to school. But then someone corrected me and said, he goes to school. And just like that, it clicked. That is how I learned, by doing, not by memorizing rules from a book. The best way to understand grammar is by living the language, not just studying it. 7. Consistency over perfection. A lot of people wait until they think their English is perfect before they even try speaking. But that is the wrong approach. I did not wait. I started speaking on day 1. Even when I knew just a handful of words, I used them anyway. I made a promise to myself. Every single day, I would do something in English. Some days, I talked for just 10 minutes. Other days, I wrote a little paragraph. Sometimes, I just listened to an English podcast while walking. It did not matter how small it was. The most important thing was doing it every day. Even when I felt lazy or tired, I still did something. That consistency is what made all the difference. So stop doubting yourself. Stop coming up with reasons to delay. Fill your world with English. Speak it. Listen to it. Read it. Write it. Do it every single day. Make mistakes. Learn from them. Get better. Repeat. Your journey to fluency begins right now. And if my story inspired you, even just a little, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I will be right here, walking beside you,